Mastering audit challenges. Boards and management ignore these operational risks at their own peril. When evaluating the organization's overall risk profile, what are the most critical operational risks that its management and board of directors ought to be concerned about? And how is the internal audit function, as an independent and objective assurance provider, addressing these significant risks through its audit plans, risk assessments, and control evaluations to ensure operational excellence and risk mitigation? The pursuit of operational excellence. It's a journey, not a destination, and one that requires a deep understanding of the organization's inner workings. As I sat in on a meeting with the management team of a large corporation, I couldn't help but think about the parallels between an organization's operational risks and the human experience. The conversation turned to the internal audit function and how it was struggling to identify and address the most critical operational risks. It was clear that the team was stuck in a mindset of checkbox auditing rather than taking a holistic, intuitive approach to risk assessment. I thought back to my own experiences, working with organizations to improve their operational efficiency. It's amazing how often we overlook the obvious, the things that are right in front of us. We get so caught up in the noise, the distractions, the politics, that we forget to tune in to the unique rhythm of the organization. Take, for example, the story of a manufacturing company I worked with. On paper, their operations seemed textbook perfect, efficient, streamlined, and profitable. But as I spent more time with the team, I began to sense a disconnect between the factory floor and the executive suite. The workers were frustrated, feeling like their concerns were being ignored, and the management team was oblivious to the elephants in the room. It was only by immersing myself in the organization, by listening to the whispers of the factory floor, that I began to identify the critical operational risks. It wasn't about checking boxes or following procedures. It was about tapping into the collective consciousness of the organization. I realized that the internal audit function was not so different. Rather than relying on spreadsheets and risk matrices, the team needed to tune into the organization's unique frequency. They needed to listen to the stories, the anecdotes, the whispers of the employees. So, we set out to create an audit plan that was more akin to an anthropological study. We spent hours observing, listening, and asking questions. We mapped the organization's processes, not just on paper, but in the real world, where the rubber meets the road. As we dug deeper, the critical operational risks began to emerge. It wasn't about the absence of policies or procedures, it was about the absence of empathy, of understanding, of connection. The management team was so focused on mitigating risk that they forgot to engage with their people. We presented our findings to the management team, and the room was silent. It was as if they had never seen their organization in this light before. They realized that operational excellence wasn't about avoiding mistakes. It was about creating an environment where people felt seen, heard, and valued. The internal audit function became an integral part of this journey. They shifted their focus from checking boxes to facilitating conversations, to listening to the stories of the employees. They began to identify critical operational risks, not through spreadsheets, but through the eyes and ears of the organization. As I walked out of that meeting room, I couldn't help but think about the power of intuition, of listening to the whispers of the organization. It's a skill that's often overlooked, but it's the key to unlocking operational excellence. In practical terms, here are the actionable steps that the internal audit function can take to address critical operational risks. Immerse yourself in the organization. Spend time on the factory floor, in the call centers, with the customers. Listen to the stories, the anecdotes, the whispers of the employees. Map the organization's processes in the real world, not just on paper. Focus on the people, not just the policies and procedures. Facilitate conversations, rather than simply auditing controls. Identify critical operational risks through the eyes and ears of the organization, rather than relying on spreadsheets and risk matrices. It's a journey, not a destination, and one that requires patience, empathy, and a willingness to listen. As I looked around that meeting room, I knew that we were just beginning to scratch the surface of operational excellence. But I also knew that we were on the right path, one that would lead to a more harmonious, more efficient, and more human organization. In today's rapidly changing business environment, organizations face an array of operational risks that can significantly impact their ability to achieve strategic objectives and maintain sustainability. As an independent and objective assurance provider, the internal audit function plays a vital role in identifying, assessing, and mitigating these risks to ensure operational excellence. To do so, the internal audit function must focus on the most critical operational risks that the management and board of directors ought to be concerned about. One of the most critical operational risks is strategic risk, which arises when an organization's strategy is not aligned with its mission, vision, and objectives. Strategic risk can lead to poor investment decisions, inadequate resource allocation, and failure to adapt to changing market conditions. To address this risk, the internal audit function should assess the organization's strategic planning process, evaluate the alignment of strategy with objectives, and review the adequacy of risk management frameworks to identify potential blind spots. Another critical operational risk is operational process risk, which occurs when inefficient or ineffective processes hinder an organization's ability to deliver products or services efficiently and effectively. This risk can lead to process bottlenecks, quality issues, and reputational damage. The internal audit function should evaluate the design and operating effectiveness of key business processes, identify opportunities for process improvement, and assess the adequacy of controls to mitigate process risks. Cybersecurity risk is another significant operational risk that organizations face, particularly in today's digital age. Cybersecurity risk can lead to data breaches, financial losses, and reputational damage. The internal audit function should assess the organization's cybersecurity posture, evaluate the adequacy of cybersecurity controls, and review incident response plans to ensure effective risk mitigation. Supply chain risk is another critical operational risk that organizations face, particularly in today's globalized economy. Supply chain risk can lead to disruptions, reputational damage, and financial losses. The internal audit function should evaluate the organization's supply chain management practices, assess the adequacy of supply chain risk management frameworks, and review the effectiveness of controls to mitigate supply chain risks. To address these significant operational risks, the internal audit function should develop a comprehensive audit plan that is risk-based and aligned with the organization's strategic objectives. The audit plan should prioritize audits that focus on high-risk areas, such as strategic risk, operational process risk, cybersecurity risk, and supply chain risk. In addition to the audit plan, the internal audit function should conduct regular risk assessments to identify, assess, and prioritize operational risks. The risk assessment process should involve stakeholders across the organization to ensure a comprehensive understanding of operational risks. The internal audit function should also review and update the risk assessment process regularly to ensure that it remains relevant and effective. Furthermore, the internal audit function should evaluate the effectiveness of controls to mitigate operational risks. This includes assessing the design and operating effectiveness of controls, identifying control gaps and weaknesses, and recommending improvements to controls. The internal audit function should also review the adequacy of risk management frameworks and recommend improvements to ensure effective risk mitigation. To ensure operational excellence and risk mitigation, the internal audit function should provide regular assurance to the management and board of directors on the effectiveness of risk mitigation strategies and controls. This includes providing regular audit reports, risk assessments, and control evaluations to ensure that stakeholders are informed and aware of operational risks and mitigation strategies. In conclusion, the internal audit function plays a critical role in identifying, assessing, and mitigating operational risks to ensure operational excellence and risk mitigation. By focusing on critical operational risks, developing a comprehensive audit plan, conducting regular risk assessments, evaluating the effectiveness of controls, and providing regular assurance to stakeholders, the internal audit function can help the organization achieve its strategic objectives and maintain sustainability in an ever-changing business environment.